Welcome. In this lesson, we're going to learn where to find the SSH terminal inside of our Red Hat Enterprise 7 distribution, as well as how to learn to issue commands correctly by looking at man pages. Now, go ahead and connect to your linuxacademy.com lab server using the VNC program to connect to the GUI interface. Now, once you're logged in, as you have here, we have our applications on the top left-hand side. Now, generally speaking, your terminal is going to be found underneath your favorites. If it's not there, it's actually going to be found underneath our utilities. Click on that and it's going to open up the terminal application. The terminal application here is what we use in order to get to the command line on our Red Hat distribution. Now, most of the time during this course, we're just going to be connecting via the terminal. You can connect into your VNC GUI and issue commands on your terminal here, or you can SSH into your lab server from a regular client-side terminal like we do most of the time. So once we're inside of the Red Hat distribution here, inside of our command line terminal, I'm going to go ahead and SU to the root user. And I'm just going to very simply show you how to issue commands or learn to read manual pages to see how to issue commands with the correct syntax. So for example, if I do a man ls, we see on here that we have list directory contents. From here, really, we only have one way of executing the file, but this is telling us something. For example, our bracket here, option, ... file, ... All of this means something. So what we have here is we have our first option. What it's saying is this is where we list our options. Inside of the bracket, it means it's optional. So we're saying list our options or flags, so our -a. Our options and flags, which are the same word used interchangeably, what they will do is they will change the behavior of your program. It'll change the expected default behavior of your program. So if I wanted to, I could do an ls. Let's head into the etc directory and do an ls, and I can list the directory contents. If I do an ls-al, it changes my expected behavior. That's what the flags and options or options allow us to do. And in this case, it listed all of the long listing details of our files inside of the etc directory, our permissions, our ownership, the number of hard links, and the date. So I'm going to go back into the ls command to continue reading. So this is going to list our optional flags if we pass those in here. The ... represents or means an arbitrary length of items of that previous specific item type. So what this is saying is we could pass an arbitrary number of those flags. So inside of Linux, we often use multiple flags or options in order to modify the behavior of a command. Next, we have file. This is inside of brackets as well. This is telling me that it's optional. What I can do here is I can optionally specify a file to get the long listing details of that file. And I can do that in multiple files or directories. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. I can do an ls-al on the yum directory. I can do an ls-al inside of our etc directory. Then I can ask it to do it inside of the yum directory, and then I can ask it to do inside of the home directory. So I'm able to do a long listing and list the contents of 3 different directories at one time by passing those multiple options in the file area. So again, I knew I could do that because inside of this file, it was followed by the 3 dots, which represents an arbitrary length of items of a specific type. So to sum up, we can do an ls, and we can pass multiple options or flags together inside of a specific area. I know we can do that because the man ls command says we have the ... or the arbitrary number. Same thing with file. I can also do an ls-a, then a -l on a specific directory. It doesn't have to be dash total together. They could be separated to have their own dashes for a little bit cleaner format. A lot of times throughout the environments, you'll see most people group them together like this because you can. So next, let's go ahead and take a look at the cal command. Now we see here that we have first our options that are available to us, and again our optional options. Then we have day, month, and year, and these are considered embedded brackets. Now the best way to learn from this is which one is a requirement when you first enter in the command for an option. If you remove your outermost set of brackets, what do you see? You see that you have the year there. So let's demonstrate this. If I do a cal 1, what's going to happen? What's going to happen is it's going to show me all 12 months for a calendar for year 1. If we do a cal 2015, it's going to show it for 2015. The reason it's doing that is because if we remove our outermost brackets, we know that year is the first argument that's going to need to be taken. And then we can add on month in front of it or day in front of that. And again, we can remove the outermost brackets to see which argument comes next. So for example, we could do cal 9 2015. What this is going to do is it's going to show us September, because the month of September is 9 of 2015. A cal 2 2015 is going to show us the month of February. And in fact, it's going to highlight today, which is February 2nd. Now, if I want to specify a specific day, cal 9 of September 2015, I can do that by passing in all three arguments, and it's going to highlight the specific day we requested. It's going to highlight 2015, September 9. So the other command we can look at is man-mv. And the reason we're doing this is because we're trying to learn how to read the manual pages correctly. What we do know as part of the Red Hat certification is that Red Hat's going to actually have you download and install a third-party program and learn how to use it based off manual pages. This is directly on their website as a requirement. So we see we have multiple options here. First, what this is saying, if we're just specifying a single source or file name, we can move it to any destination. We can move it into a file, or we can move it as another file, effectively renaming it. So if the source is our MOTD and our etc is our /home MOTD, that's okay. However, if I'm specifying multiple source files to move, right? I know it's multiple because we have the 3 dots, our arbitrary number of following items. Then it must be a directory. That's what it's saying here. Then the parameter must be a directory. Again, if we are just doing a source, a single source, it can be any destination, which is a file or a directory. But if we're doing a source with multiple files, then it must be a destination as a directory. So for example, if I head in to my etc directory, which we're already there, and I do an mv on the etc MOTD file, and I put it inside of the home MOTD, I can do that. I can even rename it if I wanted to by passing it 1, or whatever name I wanted it to be. It's going to rename it. It just needs to go inside of a directory, or it could be a directory because we could be moving the etc directory into a different name. However, if I'm specifying multiple items like etc issue, those 2 files, I can't rename those. That's not an option for me. So I must specify a directory to move those to. It could be the current working directory. It could be the /home directory. It could be whatever directory. What it's saying is you can't just rename it because we're following multiple items. And so when we're reading the mv command, what we notice is that these 2 things is how we read that. We also see that we have 2 parameters here. That means we need a minimum of 2 parameters in order for our command to work. Our brackets represent optional, but we have our underline items here which represent required parameters. Now if we take a look at the man-date command, we have our options here, any number of options that we want in order to manipulate how the program works. We can also optionally specify the format. So if we do a date, by default it's going to output a specific format. But if we take a look at the man-dates again, and we browse down, there's a format section. So we could specify a different format in which to output this. If you see I have a %d, so if I did a date plus %d, it's going to output it in that numerical format that we just saw inside of the date manual program. The other side of this is we also have the option for our flags here. So what this is saying is if you're using one of these flags, you can either use -u, and we have this pipe. This pipe represents it's or. You can't use both. You can't use -u with --utc. You can't use any combination of these together. You can't use -u or -utc. All you can use is either -u or --utc or --universal. And that's what the pipe means when we're reading this. And again, we have our embedded brackets here. To see which command it takes first, we remove the outermost brackets and we see that it would be mmddhhm. And then we could specify different information like the number of seconds. So we can use the date command to say now plus 10 seconds. We can use the date command to create a whole bunch of different dates, and we'll learn that throughout this course, especially as we're working through manipulating expiration dates for users on our system. So that concludes it for this lesson. The big takeaway here is how to read the syntax inside of the man pages for commands on our program in order to access a shell prompt and issue commands with our correct syntax. That concludes it for this lesson. Go ahead and complete this lesson.